The iron shackles bit deep into Celeste's wrists as Sheriff Corvain dragged her from the courthouse steps toward the waiting prison wagon. Her emerald dress, once pristine for what should have been her wedding day, now bore the dust and shame of public humiliation. The crowd of Millbrook's finest citizens jeered and pointed, their faces twisted with righteous indignation at the woman who'd been caught stealing bread from the general store. "Please," Celeste whispered, her voice breaking as the sheriff's meaty hand gripped her arm. "I was only trying to feed my sister's children. She's been bedridden since—" "Save your sob story for the judge in Eastridge," Corvain snarled, his tobacco-stained teeth gleaming in the afternoon sun. $47 in damages, plus court fees. That's what you owe. And since you ain't got it, you'll be working it off in the state workhouse for the next 3 years. The prison wagon loomed before them like a coffin on wheels. It's barred. Windows casting shadows across Celeste's pale face. She'd heard the stories about what happened to women in those places, the back-breaking labor, the cruel guards, the way innocents died a slow death behind those walls. Her legs gave out, and she would have collapsed if not for Corvain's iron grip. "Hold on there, Sheriff." The voice cut through the crowd's murmur like a blade through silk. Every head turned toward the sound, and Celeste's heart nearly stopped beating. Standing at the edge of the courthouse steps was the most magnificent man she'd ever laid eyes on, tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. His black hat was tilted at just the right angle to cast dramatic shadows across his chiseled features, and his leather chaps bore the wear of countless miles in the saddle. Corvain's grip loosened slightly. "This ain't your concern, Maverick." Donnelly. So this was the legendary bounty hunter she'd heard whispered about in the saloons and general stores. Maverick Donnelly, the man who could track a ghost through a blizzard and had never failed to bring in his quarry. What could he possibly want with her situation? "I reckon it is my concern," Maverick said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. He pulled a leather pouch from his vest pocket, and the sound of coins jingling made everyone freeze. "How much does she owe?" $47, plus 15 in court fees, Corvain replied, his eyes fixed on the money pouch like a starving man staring at a feast. Without hesitation, Maverick counted out the coins into his palm. "There's $70. That should cover everything. Plus, a little extra for your trouble, Sheriff." Celeste's world tilted on its axis. This stranger, this dangerous, beautiful stranger, was buying her freedom. But why? What did he want from her? As Corvain eagerly snatched the money and began unlocking her shackles, she found herself drowning in Maverick's stormy gaze. "Why?" she whispered as the iron fell away from her wrists. Maverick stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell leather and sage and something distinctly masculine that made her knees weak. "Because Miss Celeste Hartwell," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "You're going to help me catch the most dangerous outlaw this side of the Mississippi. And in return, I'm going to give you something you've never had before." "That?" she breathed. His smile was slow and devastating. A real chance at living. The dusty trail stretched endlessly before them as Maverick's horse, Thunder, carried them both away from Millbrook. Celeste sat behind him in the saddle, her arms wrapped around his lean waist out of necessity, though she tried to ignore how perfectly she seemed to fit against his broad back. The rhythmic motion of the horse and the warmth of his body were doing dangerous things to her composure. "Where exactly are you taking me?" she asked for the third time in as many hours. "Patience, darlin'," Maverick replied, his voice carrying that same easy confidence that both thrilled and unnerved her. "All will be revealed soon enough." They rode in silence for another hour before he finally guided Thunder off the main trail, toward a hidden canyon she never would have noticed. Ancient red rocks towered above them, creating a natural cathedral that took her breath away. At the canyon's heart sat a modest cabin, smoke rising from its chimney like a promise of warmth and safety. "Welcome to my sanctuary," Maverick said as he dismounted, then reached up to help her down. His hands spanned her waist completely as he lifted her from the saddle, and for a moment that lasted an eternity, they stood chest to chest, breathing the same air. "This is beautiful," Celeste whispered, trying to ignore the way her heart raced. At his proximity, But you still haven't told me why you paid for my freedom. What do you really want from me? Maverick's hands didn't leave her waist. The man I'm hunting is called Vicious Val Cordero. He's been robbing banks and trains from here to California, always staying one step ahead of every lawman who's tried to catch him. But he has one weakness, which is beautiful women. His thumb traced a small circle against her ribs, and she had to fight not to melt into his touch. Val can't resist playing the hero for a damsel in distress. I've been tracking him for 6 months, but I need the right bait to draw him out. The words hit her like a physical blow. She jerked away from his touch, her eyes blazing with hurt and fury. Bait, that's what I am to you? You bought me like a piece of livestock to use? As bait? Celeste, let me explain, don't. She backed away from him, her hands shaking with emotion. I should have known. No man pays $70 for a stranger's freedom out of the goodness of his heart. What was I supposed to do? Throw myself at this outlaw and hope he doesn't kill me in the process? Maverick's face darkened. It's not like that. Would never put you in real danger. I've been planning this for months, working out every detail. You'd be perfectly safe. Safe. Her laugh was bitter. I've never been safe a day in my life. My father sold me to pay his gambling debts when I was 16. My intended husband turned out to be a cruel drunk who beat his horses and would have beaten me too. I've been stealing food to keep my sister's children from starving because there's no honest work for a woman alone in this world. And now, you with your storm gray eyes and your gentle hands, you're just another man who wants to use me. She turned and started walking toward the canyon entrance, not caring that she was miles from anywhere, not caring that she had nowhere to go. All that mattered was getting away from the crushing disappointment of learning that her miracle had been nothing more than a business transaction. Celeste? Wait. She heard his boots on the rocky ground behind her, but she didn't stop. Because if she looked at him again, she saw something resembling genuine emotion in those beautiful eyes. She might just believe whatever lie he told her next. Bit, woman, will you just listen to me? His hand caught her arm, spinning her around to face him. The raw desperation in his voice made her pause despite herself. Yes, I need your help to catch Val Cordero, he said, his chest heaving. But that's not why I paid your release fee. Well, I don't even care about the bounty anymore, then why? The question tore from Celeste's throat like a prayer she was afraid to believe in. Maverick's hands framed her face, his calloused thumbs, brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Because when I saw you on those courthouse steps, looking so brave and terrified at the same time, something inside me came alive for the first time in 10 years. Because the way you held your head high even when they were dragging you to that prison wagon told me more about your character than most people reveal in a lifetime. And because, God help me, I took one look at you and knew I'd move mountains to keep you safe. The sincerity in his voice made her knees weak. You don't even know me. I know you stole bread to feed hungry children. I know you've been carrying burdens that would break most men. I know you've got fire in your soul and strength in your heart. His forehead touched hers, and she could feel his breath against her lips. And I know that somewhere along the way, I stopped hunting Val Cordero for the bounty and started hunting him so I could have a reason to spend time with you, Maverick. His name was a whisper on her lips. Stay, he said simply. Not as bait. Not as part of some plan.
Yes.
Stay because I'm asking you to. Stay because maybe, just maybe, we could build something real together in this God-forsaken world. Before she could answer, the thunder of approaching horses echoed through the canyon. Maverick instantly pushed her behind him, his hand moving to the Colt .45 at his hip with practiced ease. Expecting company? Celeste whispered. No. His voice was granite. Get inside the cabin now. But now Celeste. She ran for the cabin as 6 riders thundered into view, their faces hidden behind bandanas, their weapons already drawn. The leader, a man with cold blue eyes and silver hair, held up his hand to stop his companions. Well, the man called out, his voice carrying a cultured accent that seemed at odds with his outlaw appearance. The famous Maverick Donnelly. I must say, Your reputation precedes you. From the cabin window, Celeste watched Maverick's stance shift almost imperceptibly. Vicious Val Cordero, I presume. You're a hard man to find, Val laughed, a sound like broken glass. Not hard enough, apparently. I must admit I'm curious about your methods. Following me to my own hideout is either very brave or very stupid. Your hideout? Maverick's voice remained steady, but Celeste could see the tension in his shoulders. This is my sanctuary. Has been for 3 years. Oh, my dear bounty hunter, Val said, dismounting with theatrical flair. This canyon has been my base of operations for the better part of a year. The cabin, the corral, even that lovely little garden patch behind the house all mine, which means you and your beautiful companion are trespassing. Celeste's blood ran cold. She was trapped in an outlaw's lair with the one man who'd shown her kindness in years, facing off against 6 armed killers. But as she watched Maverick square his shoulders and check his weapons, she realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. She wasn't going to run, not this time. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The lady has nothing to do with this, Val, Maverick said quietly. Let her go, and you and I can settle our business like men. Let her go? Val's laugh was genuinely amused. My dear fellow, she's the most interesting part of this whole encounter.
Tell me, miss. ...
Hartwell, Celeste said, surprising herself. By stepping out of the cabin, Celeste Hartwell, Miss Hartwell. And how did you come to be in the company of the legendary Maverick Donnelly? She lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of courage she possessed. He saved me. How romantic. And what, pray tell, did he save you from? From a life of thinking I wasn't worth saving. The words hung in the air like a challenge. And Celeste saw something flicker across Val's face, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Val Cordero studied Celeste with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey, but there was something else in his pale blue eyes, something that looked almost like respect. You have spirit, Miss Hartwell. I appreciate that in a woman. Keep your appreciation to yourself, Maverick growled, his hand never leaving his weapon. Now, there's no need for hostility, Val said, though his 5 companions kept their guns trained on the bounty hunter. I'm a reasonable man. In fact, I have a proposition for you both. Not interested, Maverick replied flatly. Oh, but you should be. You see, Miss Hartwell's presence here creates a fascinating opportunity. Val began to pace, his movements graceful despite the weapons. Strapped to his body, I've been planning one final job, the Territorial Bank in Silver Creek. Enough money to disappear forever. Start fresh somewhere the law can't follow. But it requires a very specific type of distraction. Celeste felt her stomach drop. You want me to help you rob a bank? Heavens no, my dear. Nothing so crude. I simply need a beautiful woman to walk into that bank at precisely the right moment and faint. Create a commotion, draw the guards' attention. 5 minutes, and then you walk away. No questions asked. Absolutely not. Maverick stepped closer. To Celeste, his body forming a protective barrier between her and the outlaws. Find yourself another patsy, Val. But here's the beautiful part, Val continued, as if Maverick hadn't spoken. If Miss Hartwell agrees to help me, I'll let you both live. In fact, I'll give you $1,000 in safe passage to anywhere you want to go. Refuse, and well. He gestured to his armed companions. I'm sure you understand. Celeste, mind raced. $1,000 was more money than she'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to set up her sister's family somewhere safe, maybe even buy a small piece of land where they could start over. All for 5 minutes of acting, and the risk of being caught up in a bank robbery? Don't even consider it, Maverick said quietly, reading her thoughts. Val Cordero doesn't leave witnesses, no matter what he promises. Now that hurts my feelings, Val said with mock-wounded pride. I'm a man of my word, Donnelly. We'll ask anyone who's worked with me and lived to tell about it. Name one. Val's smile faltered slightly. Miss Hartwell, you have a choice to make. Help me with this one small task, and you and your knight in shining armor can ride off into the sunset together. Refuse, and this canyon becomes your final resting place. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Celeste could feel Maverick's tension radiating off him in waves. Could see the calculations running behind his storm-gray eyes as he looked for an escape route that didn't exist. "There is a third option," she said suddenly. Both men turned to stare at her. "What?" Val asked. "You let Maverick go, and I'll not only help you with the bank, I'll stay with your gang permanently. I imagine having a woman around might be useful for more than just one job." "Celeste?" "No." Maverick's voice was raw. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me." She turned to face him, memorizing every line of his beautiful face. "You saved me. From a prison that would have destroyed my soul, the least I can do is save you from a grave." "How touching," Val murmured. "Yet unnecessary. You see, I've decided I want you both for this job." "Both?" Maverick's hand tightened on his gun. "Oh, yes. Miss Hartwell will provide the distraction inside the bank, and you, my dear bounty hunter, will be outside holding the horses. After all, who better to plan an escape route than the man who's spent years tracking criminals? If we refuse?" Val's smile turned cold as winter moonlight. "Then I'll kill you slowly, starting with the lady, and make sure you watch every moment of it." Celeste saw the exact moment Maverick made his decision. His shoulders relaxed minutely, and he nodded once. "Why tomorrow at noon? The bank receives a large cash shipment every second Tuesday of the month. Tomorrow is Tuesday." Val's gang began to make camp around the cabin. Celeste realized with crystal clarity that their chances of surviving the next 24 hours were slim to none. But as Maverick's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, she also realized something else. For the first time in her life, she had something worth dying for. The pre-dawn darkness wrapped around the canyon like a shroud as Celeste lay awake, on the narrow cabin bed, listening to Maverick's steady breathing beside her. They'd been given the illusion of privacy. Val was too confident to worry about his captives escaping from a canyon with only one way out, but she knew armed guards were stationed outside. "Can't sleep either?" Maverick's voice was barely a whisper in the darkness. "How could I?" She turned to face him, though she could barely make out his profile in the starlight filtering through the single window. "In a few hours, we're going to help rob a bank, and then we're probably going to die." His hand found hers beneath the rough blanket. "Not if I can help it. Maverick, there are 6 of them, and 2 of us. Even if you're the fastest gun in the territory, I'm not worried about being fast enough," he interrupted. "I'm worried about keeping you safe while I handle them." Despite everything, she almost smiled. Even facing impossible odds, his first concern was her protection. "You really meant what you said yesterday, didn't you? About moving mountains to keep me safe?" Every word. He shifted closer, and she could feel the warmth of his body against hers. "Celeste, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said before all this started. What? I love you." The words were simple, direct, devastating in their honesty. "I know it's crazy. We've known each other less than 2 days, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Whatever happens today, I needed you to know." Tears pricked her eyes. "Maverick, you don't have to say anything. I love you too." The confession spilled out of her like water from a broken dam, "which is why I can't let you die for me." Before he could react, she was moving, slipping from the bed and reaching for the small derringer she'd spotted earlier in Val's saddlebags. If she could get the drop on him, maybe create enough of a distraction for Maverick to escape, don't even think about it. She froze at the sound of Val's cultured voice. He stood in the doorway, fully dressed despite the early hour, a bemused smile playing about his lips. "Did I wake you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "My dear girl, I haven't slept through the night in 15 years. What? It's an occupational hazard." He stepped into the cabin, and she noticed he wasn't wearing his guns. "Now, step away from my saddlebags like a good girl." Maverick was already reaching for his weapon, but Val held up a hand. "Please, Donnelly, if I wanted you dead, you'd already be food for the buzzards. I came to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that neither of you has any intention of actually helping me rob that bank." Val settled into the room's single chair with casual ease. About the fact that you're planning some heroic last stand that will get you both killed? And about the fact that I might have a solution that serves everyone's interests? Celeste and Maverick exchanged glances. We're listening, Maverick said carefully. The truth is, I'm tired. 15 years of running, of looking over my shoulder, of never staying in one place long enough to call it home. This Silver Creek job, it really is meant to be my last. Enough money to buy a new identity and disappear for good? To retire? Celeste said. Why drag us into it? Because I need insurance. The bank owner, Cornelius Ashford, knows me by sight. He's been expecting me to try for his vault for months. But he doesn't know you. Val's gaze fixed on Maverick. More importantly, he trusts bounty hunters. Respects them. What are you suggesting? Walk in the front door. Tell him you've heard rumors about a planned robbery and offer your services as additional security. Once you're inside, you can signal when it's safe for my boys to move. Maverick's jaw tightened. You want me to betray an innocent man's trust? I want you to help me take money from a bank that charges widows 15% interest and forecloses on farms during drought years. Cornelius Ashford isn't exactly a pillar of virtue, and me? Celeste asked. What's my role in this revised plan? Val's smile turned predatory. You, my dear, are going to help me disappear. You see, the moment this job is finished, Maverick Donnelly is going to capture me. There'll be a dramatic chase, perhaps a shootout by the river, very tragically. My body will never be recovered. Presumed dead, swept away by the current. But you'll actually be starting a new life somewhere far from here. And in return for your cooperation, you'll both receive not just your lives, but $5,000. And my word that Val Cordero will never be seen again. The offer hung in the air between them. It was tempting, perhaps too tempting. But as Celeste looked at the outlaw's pale blue eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being offered a choice between different types of doom. The Silver Creek Territorial Bank stood like a fortress in the center of town, its red brick facade and iron-barred windows broadcasting security and permanence. Celeste stood across the street in her carefully mended dress, watching Maverick disappear through the bank's heavy oak doors, and tried to control the trembling in her hands. The plan was simple, perhaps too simple. Maverick would convince the bank owner to hire him as additional security for the day. At precisely noon, when the guards changed shifts and attention was momentarily divided, Val and his men would strike. Celeste's job was to be nearby, ready to create a distraction if things went wrong. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, she thought grimly. Nervous, my dear. Val appeared at her elbow, looking every inch the respectable businessman in his borrowed suit and freshly trimmed beard. Only his eyes gave away his true nature, pale blue and utterly cold. Shouldn't I be? This is my first bank robbery. Hopefully, your last as well, assuming your bounty hunter boyfriend can play his part convincingly. Through the bank's front window, she could see Maverick in animated conversation with a portly man in an expensive vest. Cornelius Ashford, presumably. Even from a distance, she could read the tension in Maverick's shoulders, the careful control in his gestures. He's a good man, she said quietly. Doesn't deserve to be part of this. Good men rarely get what they deserve, Miss Hartwell. That's one of life's fundamental cruelties. Val checked his pocket watch. 5 minutes to noon. Are you ready? Asked. Ready as anyone could be for something so fundamentally wrong? She nodded. The church bell began to toll the noon hour, just as Val's men took their positions around the bank. Celeste watched Maverick through the window, saw him nod to the guards, saw him move closer to the vault, where they'd agreed he should be when the robbery began. On the fourth toll, everything went to hell. Instead of waiting for his signal, Val's men burst through the bank's front doors with guns blazing. But instead of catching anyone by surprise, they found themselves facing a wall of armed deputies who'd been waiting in ambush. It's a trap, one of the outlaws screamed before a deputy's bullet cut him down. Through the chaos, Celeste saw Maverick draw his weapon not to help the outlaws, but to defend the innocent people caught in the crossfire. She watched in horror as he shielded an elderly woman with his own body, taking a bullet in the shoulder that had been meant for her. "You double-crossing bastard." Val snarled, his gun appearing in his hand as if by magic. "You planned this?"
"Oh,
"Hell, I did." Maverick's return shot went wide as he stumbled, blood spreading across his shirt. "This wasn't my enough." The voice that cut through the gunfire belonged to Sheriff Corvain from Millbrook, and he wasn't alone. A dozen lawmen poured into the bank. Turning the robbery into a massacre, Celeste didn't think, didn't plan, didn't consider the consequences. She simply ran toward the bank, toward Maverick, toward the man she loved who was bleeding and outnumbered, and about to die for a crime he'd never wanted to commit. "Stop." She burst through the bank's shattered doors, her hands raised, her voice carrying over the gunfire. "Stop shooting, please." The unexpected appearance of a woman in the middle of the firefight caused a momentary lull. It was all the opening Val needed. His gun swung toward her, his face twisted with rage. "If I'm going to hang," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence, "I'm taking her with me." Time slowed to a crawl. She saw Val's finger tighten. On the trigger, saw Maverick wounded and weakening, tried desperately to get between her and the gun. Saw the muzzle flash that meant her death was racing toward her at 800 feet per second. Then she was flying backward. Maverick's body slamming into hers, carrying her to safety behind the teller's counter as Val's bullet shattered the UHL air where she'd been standing. Maverick. She caught him as he collapsed, his blood soaking through her dress. "Oh God, you're hit again." "Worth it," he whispered, his storm gray eyes already growing distant. Every ... every bullet. You're safe. That's all. All that matters." Around them, the gunfight was ending. Val Cordero lay motionless in a spreading pool of blood, his pale blue eyes staring sightlessly at the bank's tin ceiling. His surviving men had thrown down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender, but none of that mattered to Celeste, as she held the dying man who'd given up everything for her. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered, pressing her hands against his wounds, trying futilely to stop the bleeding. "Not now. Not when we were finally going to have a real chance, Celeste. ... His hand found hers, slick with blood but still strong. "Listen to me, the reward. For Val ... it's yours. $10,000? Take it. Take care of your sister's family. Be ... be happy." "I'll be happy when you stop trying to die on me, Maverick Donnelly." She looked around desperately. "Doctor. We need a doctor." But even as help arrived, even as skilled hands began working to save his life, Celeste couldn't shake the feeling that their brief, impossible love story was about to end before it had really begun. 3 months later, Celeste sat in the garden, behind her new house, on the outskirts of Silver Creek, watching her nephew and nieces play among the sunflowers she'd planted. The reward money from Val Cordero's capture had indeed been $10,000, enough to buy this small farm, bring her sister's family to safety, start the new life Maverick had dreamed of giving her. The only thing missing was Maverick himself. "The doctor says you can see him now." She turned to find Sheriff Martinez, the decent lawman who'd replaced the corrupt Corvain, standing at her garden gate. Her heart leaped into her throat the way it did every time someone came with news from the territorial hospital. "How is he today?" "Awake. Asking for you as usual." Martinez's weathered face creased into a smile. "That man's got more lives than a barn cat." "The doctor said he shouldn't have survived the first week, let alone 3 months. Celeste had made this journey every day since the shooting, riding the 15 miles to the hospital and back, holding vigil beside Maverick's bed, talking to him even when the doctors said he couldn't hear her. She'd been there when the fever finally broke, when he first opened his eyes, when he spoke her name like a prayer answered. But she'd also been there for the setbacks, infections, the nights when his breathing grew so shallow she was sure she was about to lose him forever. Miss Hartwell, young nurse, met her at the hospital entrance. "He's in the garden today. Dr. Reeves thought the fresh air might do him good." She found him sitting beneath an ancient oak tree, his left arm still in a sling but his color finally returning to normal. The sight of him alive and healing never failed to steal her breath away. "There's my miracle," he said softly as she approached. echoing the words she'd spoken to him in the bank 3 months ago. "How are you feeling?" She settled onto the bench beside him, close enough to touch but careful not to jar his healing wounds, like a man who's been shot 3 times and lived to tell about it. His good hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with familiar ease. "The doctor says I can leave next week." "That's wonderful news." She tried to keep her voice steady, but he knew her too well. But where will you go? What will you do? "You can't go back to bounty hunting, not with your injuries." She stopped, unable to voice the fear that had been eating at her for weeks. "And you what?" "I'm scared you'll realize that what happened between us was just the heat of the moment. Life and death situations, they make people feel things that aren't real. Now that we're both safe, now that we have time to think clearly." Maverick was quiet for so long that she began to think her worst fears were coming true. Then he shifted on the bench, turning to face her fully despite the obvious discomfort it caused him. "Celeste Hartwell," he said, his storm-gray eyes holding hers captive. "I've had 3 months to think clearly. 3 months to lie in that hospital bed and consider every angle, every possibility, every reason why what I feel for you might not be real." Her heart sank. And I've come to a conclusion." He reached into his pocket with his good hand and pulled out a small velvet box that made her breath catch. "I concluded that I'm tired of wasting time we might not have." The ring inside was simple, but perfect, a single diamond that caught the afternoon sunlight and threw it back in brilliant fragments. But it wasn't the ring that made her eyes fill with tears. It was the expression on Maverick's face, the hope and love and absolute certainty she saw there. "I can't offer you riches or an easy life," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm a broken-down bounty hunter with more scars than sense and a reputation that follows me everywhere I go. But I can offer you my heart, my protection, and my promise that every day we have together will be a gift I'll never take for granted. Maverick, ... marry me, Celeste. Help me build something real and lasting in this crazy world. Say yes, and I swear to you that every morning for the rest of our lives you'll wake up knowing you're cherished." Through her tears, she saw not the dangerous bounty hunter who'd paid her release fee, not the wounded man who'd nearly died saving her life, but simply the man who'd taught her what it meant to be truly loved. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Maverick Donnelly. Yes to all of it." As he slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, as he kissed her with all the passion and promise of their impossible love story, Celeste finally understood what a miracle really looked like. It looked like a man who'd moved mountains to save her, and a love strong enough to survive anything the world could throw at them. 6 months later, on their wedding day, as they exchanged vows in the little church in Silver Creek with her sister's family, beaming in the front row, she spoke the words that had started it all. "Darling, you're my miracle." And in his eyes, she saw the promise that their love story was just beginning.